My mom texted, "Don't come, only elites are invited." But my name was already printed on their gala seating chart. By midnight, strangers were whispering, asking where I was, while a video montage used my face like a mask. I thought it was just shame, until I found paperwork with my signature that I never wrote, and a pledge I never made. The dress was hanging on the back of my bedroom door, a deep navy silk sheath that had cost me $300, which was exactly $200 more than I usually spent on anything that didn't involve tires or dentistry. I had bought it specifically for tonight. It was the kind of dress that said I was 33 years old. I was a professional, and I belonged in the room. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, holding a tube of mascara, when my phone buzzed against the marble countertop. It was a sharp, double vibration, a text message. I almost ignored it. I was running late, and the Marowell Civic Foundation Gala started receiving guests in 45 minutes. I still needed to drive across town, park, and find my parents, who had been acting skittish and strange for 3 days, but the screen lit up again, demanding attention. I lowered the mascara and picked up the phone. The name on the screen said Mom. I slid the notification open, expecting a question about parking or a request to bring breath mints. My mother was a woman of details, usually obsessing over the small things so she could ignore the big ones. The message was in all capital letters. "Don't come. Only elites are invited." I stared at the words. The blue light of the screen seemed to blur for a second. It was such an absurd sentence, so melodramatic and jagged, that I thought perhaps she had used voice-to-text by accident. It sounded like a line from a bad movie, not a message from the woman who had called me yesterday to ask how long she should microwave a frozen lasagna. Before I could type a question mark, a second message popped up below it. "Don't make it weird tonight." The mascara wand slipped from my fingers and clattered into the sink. I stood there, fully dressed in my slip, my hair half pinned, reading the words over and over. "Don't make it weird," as if I were the one making things weird. I navigated away from the text thread and opened my photo gallery. I scrolled back 3 weeks to a screenshot I had saved. It was the digital proof of the event program. I knew it by heart because I had helped design the layout. My friend Sarah, who worked in marketing for the venue, had asked me for a favor because their graphic designer had quit mid-project. I had spent 4 nights fixing the kerning on the donor list and selecting the stock photos of smiling children. And right there, on page 4, under the heading Community Partners, was my name, Lila Simmons. I zoomed in on it. It was still there. I was not imagining it. I had been invited. I had worked on the collateral. I had bought a $300 dress. I typed a reply. "I have a ticket. I helped make the program." "What are you talking about?" The 3 dots of typing appeared immediately, then vanished, then appeared again, then vanished. She never replied. I walked out of the bathroom and sat on the edge of my bed. The navy dress looked like a ghost hanging on the door. A heavy, cold sensation started in my stomach, the kind of feeling you get when you realize you have missed a step on a staircase in the dark. I needed to go to the office. I had left my laptop charger there. And if I was not going to the gala, I was going to be working, because the alternative was sitting in my apartment staring at the wall. It was a reflex. When things made no sense, I worked. The office was quiet when I arrived. The overhead lights dimmed for the evening cleaning crew. I worked for a mid-sized logistics firm near the harbor, the kind of place that kept the city moving but never made the headlines. I walked to my cubicle, my heels clicking loudly on the thin commercial carpet. My coworker, Ben, was still there, packing up his gym bag. He looked up. "Surprised to see me. You look nice," Ben said. "I thought you were off tonight. Big night for the family, right?" I froze, my hand hovering over my mouse. I was wearing a trench coat over my slip and jeans, having abandoned the navy dress. But I had not scrubbed off the heavy makeup. Plans changed. I said, "I kept my voice even. That is a shame," Ben said. He zipped up his bag. "I just saw your folks on the feed." "The feed?" I asked. "The live stream," Ben said. "The Marowell Civic Foundation is streaming the red carpet arrival. It popped up on my local news alert. Your dad looked intense." But the anchor asked if you were the daughter they are so proud of, and your mom just beamed. I felt the blood drain out of my face. "Show me," I said. Ben hesitated, sensing the shift in my mood, but he pulled his phone out and tapped the screen. He held it out to me. It was a shaky video, likely ripped from the official stream. There was the entrance to the Hotel Delamar, the grandest venue in Marrowell, draped in gold bunting, and there were my parents, my father, wearing a tuxedo that fit him too well. He must have rented a high-end one, not the usual boxy fit from the mall, was staring straight ahead, his jaw locked tight. But my mother was glowing. She was wearing a silver gown I had never seen, something structured and shimmering. She looked like she belonged to a different life. The reporter held a microphone toward them. "The Simmons family. Pillars of the new initiative," the reporter said. "Is your daughter, Lila, joining us tonight? We have heard so much about her contributions." My mother laughed, a high, tinkling sound that I did not recognize. "Oh, you know young professionals," she said. "She is so busy with her work, but she is here in spirit. We are just so proud to represent the family name." I handed the phone back to Ben. My hands were shaking. "Thanks, Ben," I said. He looked at me, concerned. "You okay, Lila?" "I am fine," I said. "Just a misunderstanding." I waited until he walked toward the elevator before I pulled out my own phone. I dialed my father. He picked up on the second ring. "Lila?" His voice was a whisper. I could hear the hum of a crowd in the background, the clinking of glass, the swell of string music. "Dad," I said, "I am watching a video of you. You just told a reporter I was busy. Mom told me not to come. What is going on?" "Lila, please," he hissed. The sound was wet and desperate. "Not now." "Why did Mom text me that?" I asked. "I am looking at the program. Dad, my name is in it. We will talk tomorrow," he said. "Please, just stay home." He hung up. My father was a man who apologized to telemarketers for wasting their time. He was a man who held doors open for people 50 feet away. He did not hang up on his daughter. The panic that had been a cold stone in my stomach cracked open and began to bleed into my chest. This was not anger. Anger requires understanding. You get angry when you know you have been wronged. This was fear. This was the sensation of the world tilting 5 degrees to the left without warning. I sat down in my office chair and woke up my computer. I typed Marrowell Civic Foundation into the search bar. The website was slick, loaded with high-resolution images of the ocean and diverse, happy people shaking hands. I clicked on the tab labeled Our Benefactors. The page loaded slowly. It was a digital donor wall, arranged by tiers, platinum, gold, silver. I scrolled down. And there it was, the Simmons family circle. It was listed under the gold tier. I stared at the screen, blinking. I knew my parents' finances. I did their taxes 2 years ago when my father broke his hip and got confused by the medical bills. They lived on a pension and Social Security. They had a small savings account for emergencies, mostly for roof repairs or a new water heater. The gold tier started at $50,000. I read the number on the screen again. $50,000. There was absolutely no way, if they sold both their cars and emptied their savings. They might scrape together $20,000. Maybe, if they took a second mortgage, perhaps they could hit 50, but the bank would never approve it on their income. My phone buzzed again. It was a screenshot from a group chat I was in with 3 old friends from college who still lived in the city. Jenna had sent the image. It was a photo of a table setting. Heavy linen tablecloths, crystal glasses, and a printed place card. Lila Simmons, Table 8. Below the photo, Jenna had typed, "Where are you? People are asking. You are seated next to Councilman Miller. Everyone is asking where the mysterious Lila is." Another message popped up from Mark. "Dude, your parents just walked by. They are acting like royalty. Are you doing a dramatic late entrance?" I looked at the computer screen. The Simmons family circle. $50,000. I looked at the text. Table 8. I looked at the memory of the text message. Only elites are invited. They were using me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They were not just attending a party, they were staging a production. My name was on the table. My name was in the program. My name was being used to answer questions about who they were, but I was not allowed to be there. I stood up. I grabbed my keys. I did not put the trench coat on properly. I just threw it over my shoulders and ran for the elevator. I drove too fast. The coastal highway was dark. The ocean, a black void to my left. The Marowell Civic Foundation was hosting the gala at the Hotel Delamar, a sprawling Victorian resort that sat on a bluff overlooking the water. It was the kind of place where valets wore white gloves and the air smelled like old money and lavender. I did not pull into the main circular drive. I saw the line of cars, Mercedes, Tesla, vintage Jaguar, snaking toward the portico. I saw the flash of cameras. I drove past the entrance and turned into the overflow lot, a gravel patch hidden behind a line of manicured hedges. It was where the staff and the caterers parked. I cut the engine. I could see the ballroom from here. The floor-to-ceiling windows were glowing with golden light. I could see the silhouettes of people moving inside, holding flutes of champagne. I sat in my Honda Civic, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I should go home. That was the smart thing to do. Go home, wait for morning, and demand an explanation when the champagne wore off. But I could not leave. My name was in that room. I got out of the car. The wind coming off the ocean was biting, whipping my hair across my face. I buttoned my coat over my jeans and walked toward the side entrance. Staying in the shadows of the hedges, I reached a vantage point near the terrace. I could see the arrivals clearly now. There was Mr. Henderson, who owned the car dealerships, laughing with a woman in red. There was Councilman Miller, shaking hands with the frantic energy of a man up for re-election. And there was a line of photographers. They were not press photographers. They were hired guns. I could tell by the way they checked their screens after every shot, ensuring the lighting was flattering. This was image management, not news. I took a step closer to the patio doors, trying to see if I could spot table 8. Ms. Simmons? I jumped, spinning around. A young woman in a black headset and a clipboard was standing 5 feet away. She looked harried. I started to speak, but my voice caught. "Oh, thank God," the woman said. She tapped her headset. "I found her. She is at the side entrance." She looked back at me, smiling with relief. "We were getting worried. The program starts in 10 minutes and we still need your signature on the media release form." I stared at her. "My signature?" "Yes," she said. She held out the clipboard. "For the broadcast. Since you are a featured partner, we need the release on file to use your likeness in the promotional materials for the Capitol campaign. Your mother said you would sign it upon arrival." I looked at the paper. It was a standard release form, but the header made my stomach turn. Marowell Civic Foundation, Legacy Donors Strategy. I never agreed to this, I said. My voice sounded thin in the wind. The woman blinked. "Oh, well, your parents said, I am not going inside." I said. She looked confused. "But you are seated at the head table, with the councilman." I took a step back. "There has been a mistake." The woman's smile faltered. She looked at my jeans, my wind-blown hair, the trench coat buttoned up to my chin. She looked at the list on her clipboard, then back at me. "Okay," she said slowly. "Do you want me to get your mother? She is just inside." "No," I said. "Do not tell her I am here." I turned and walked away. I did not run, because running would attract attention. But I walked fast, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I needed to get back to my car. I needed to leave before anyone else saw me. I cut through the service corridor that ran behind the kitchen tents. The smell of roasting beef and truffle oil was overwhelming. I was passing a row of dumpster bins when I heard a voice I knew better than my own. "It is not my fault the paperwork is missing." I stopped. It was my mother. She was not shouting, but her voice had that sharp, vibrating edge it got when she was cornered. I pressed myself against the brick wall of the kitchen building. A man's voice replied. It was smooth, professional, but cold. "Mrs. Simmons, the compliance rules are strict. The donor profile requires a verified biography for the community partner. You listed your daughter. The board expects to see the daughter. She is sick. My mother snapped. Food poisoning. Last minute. It happens. That is unfortunate. The man said, but it does not solve the problem of the missing sponsor document. The bank needs the counter-signature on the pledge guarantee. You said she was bringing it. I will handle it. My mother said, just keep the daughter situation contained. If anyone asks, she is ill. But the money is there. Isn't it? The check cleared. The initial deposit cleared. The man said, but without the sponsor document, the rest of the credit line is frozen. And people are asking why the community partner is invisible. Stop calling her that. My mother hissed. She is just a name on the paper. I am the one you are dealing with. I am the one who brought the Simmons family circle to this table. Do not forget that. We have not forgotten, the man said. But the elite circle has requirements. Fix the optics, Mrs. Simmons, or we will have to reassess the seating chart for the next event. I heard the click of heels walking away, fast and angry. I stood in the darkness, the smell of garbage and expensive meat mixing in the air. She is just a name on the paper. My mother had not just uninvited me, she had erased me. And then she had rewritten me as something else. A silent partner. A signature. A prop to secure a credit line I knew nothing about. I waited until the footsteps faded completely. Then I walked back to my car, got inside, and locked the doors. I did not drive away immediately. I sat there, watching the golden light of the hotel, knowing that inside, at table 8, there was an empty chair with my name on it, and a room full of people believing a lie that was costing my parents a fortune they did not have. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the spot. I was not going to make it weird tonight. It was already way past weird. It was dangerous, and I was going to find out exactly what they had signed my name to. The morning sun hit my office window with a cheerfulness that felt personally offensive. I had slept for maybe 3 hours, a restless, shallow unconsciousness broken by dreams of heavy velvet curtains closing in on me. I was sitting at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet of shipping manifests that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. When the notification chimed, it was an email. The sender was events@marowellcivic.org. The subject line read, "Thank you for confirming your attendance. A night to remember." I clicked it open, my finger hovering over the mouse with a tremor I could not quite suppress. It was a mass email, the kind sent out by automated marketing software, full of gold script and breathless exclamation points. Dear Lila, it began. We are thrilled you have confirmed your presence at the Golden Gala. Your commitment to the Simmons family circle helps us build a brighter future for Marowell. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on the back of my neck. I had not confirmed anything. I had been uninvited via text message while standing in my bathroom in my slip. At the bottom of the email was a PDF attachment labeled Donor Profile Verification LS.PDF. I opened it. It was a pre-filled form. My eyes scanned the fields, widening with every line. It had my full legal name, Lila Marie Simmons. It had my current home address, the apartment on 4th Street I had moved into 6 months ago. It had my cell phone number and my work email. But it was the section at the bottom that made the room spin. Primary residence. Owned. Employer. Logistics Management Solutions. Title. Senior Director of Operations. I was not a senior director. I was a mid-level coordinator. And I definitely did not own my apartment. I paid rent to a landlord named Mr. Henderson who refused to fix the radiator. Whoever had filled this out had inflated my life just enough to make me sound solvent, stable, and important. They had built a paper version of me that was better, richer, and more successful. I printed the document. The hum of the printer in the corner sounded like a chainsaw in the quiet office. I grabbed the warm pages, shoved them into my purse, and stood up. I am taking an early lunch, I told Ben, who was deep in a phone call about a delayed truck in Ohio. He just waved a hand at me without looking up. The Marowell Civic Foundation was headquartered in a renovated warehouse in the Arts District, a building that screamed, "We do good work with your money," It had exposed brick walls, track lighting, and a reception desk made of reclaimed driftwood that probably cost more than my car. I walked in, clutching my purse against my side. The air conditioning was set to a brisk 68 degrees. A young woman sat behind the driftwood desk. She looked like she had been grown in a laboratory dedicated to producing non-threatening, helpful people. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and she was typing furiously on a Mac. "Hi," I said. "I am Lila Simmons." The typing stopped. The woman looked up, and her face broke into a blinding smile. "Oh, Ms. Simmons." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "It is so nice to finally put a face to the name. We were not expecting you until the donor luncheon next week. But this is a lovely surprise." She gestured to the open plan office behind her, where a dozen people were working at standing desks. "I just wanted to drop by," I said, keeping my voice level. "I received an email this morning about my attendance confirmation, and there was a form attached." The receptionist, her name tag said Chloe, nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, the data verification. We are just tidying up the files for the Legacy Initiative. Your parents were so specific about getting the details right for the rollout." "The rollout?" I asked. Chloe leaned in, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The Next Generation campaign. You know, introducing the children of our founding families as the new guard. It is very exciting. Your name is the first one on the list for the brochure. The professional face of philanthropy." I felt like I had walked into a play where everyone had the script except me. "Chloe," I said, "I did not agree to be part of a rollout. I did not fill out that form." Chloe blinked. Her smile faltered. "Just a fraction. Oh, well, I assume your mother handled the administrative side. She was very efficiently handling all the paperwork for the Simmons family circle. She said you were busy with your director duties." She glanced at my coat. It was a good coat, but it was 3 years old. Not exactly senior director material. "I need to see the rest of the paperwork," I said, "not just the profile, the rest of it, the pledge documents." Chloe's posture stiffened. She sat back down slowly. "I am afraid those are confidential donor records, Ms. Simmons," she said. Her voice had lost its warmth. It was now professional and slightly bored. "Even if you are the subject, the account holder is the signatory. That would be your father." "My name is on the profile." I said, "My address is on the profile. If you have data about me, I have a right to see it. We take privacy very seriously." Chloe recited, clearly quoting a handbook. "If you have concerns, you should speak with your parents. We are just the facilitators." I placed my hands on the driftwood desk. I leaned forward. "Chloe," I said, "I am not here to cause a scene, but I am holding a document with false information about my employment and assets. That is not facilitation, that is fraud. And if I cannot see what else my name is attached to, my next conversation will not be with you. It will be with an attorney who specializes in identity theft." The air in the room seemed to vanish. Chloe stared at me. The color drained from her cheeks. She looked toward a glass-walled office in the back, where a man in a suit was talking on a phone. "One moment," she said. Her voice was brittle. She picked up her desk phone and dialed an extension. Keeping her eyes on me, she whispered something, listened, and then hung up. "I am sorry," she said, turning back to me. Her hands were clasped tightly on the desk. "Mr. Sterling is in a meeting, but we will have someone call you. We have your number on file." She emphasized the word file with a subtle, defensive edge. I stood there for a long moment. I could see the man in the glass office looking at me. He was not in a meeting. He was standing there, watching. "Fine," I said. "Have them call me." Today, I turned and walked out. My legs felt like jelly. I had never threatened anyone with an attorney in my life. I did not even have an attorney. But I knew the smell of fear when I encountered it, and for a split second, I had smelled it on Chloe. I drove to my parents' house after work. It was a bungalow in the older part of town, the kind of neighborhood where people mowed their own lawns and kept their cars for 10 years. The siding was a pale yellow that had faded under the coastal sun. My father's truck was in the driveway. It was a Ford Ranger, sturdy and reliable, just like I always thought he was. I let myself in with my key. The house smelled the way it always did, like lemon polish and pot roast. The television was on in the living room, playing the local news. My mother was in the kitchen, slicing cucumbers. She was wearing an apron over a floral blouse. When she saw me, she did not flinch. She just kept slicing. "Hello, Lila," she said. "You are just in time. We are having roast." I stood in the doorway. The normalcy of it was suffocating. "Mom," I said, "we need to talk." "About what?" she asked. She dumped the cucumbers into a salad bowl. "If this is about last night, I already told you. It was a misunderstanding. The organizers got the guest count wrong. We did not want you to be embarrassed by not having a seat." I walked into the kitchen. I saw the seating chart. "Mom," I said, "I saw the photo. Table 8? My name was right there next to Councilman Miller. There was a seat. You just didn't want me in it." My father walked in from the living room. He looked tired. His shoulders were slumped, and he was wearing his reading glasses on a chain around his neck. "Lila," he said softly, "let it go." I turned to him. "Let it go?" "Dad, I went to the foundation today. They think I am part of a legacy initiative. They have a document that says I own my apartment and I am a senior director. Did you write that?" My father looked at the floor. He rubbed the back of his neck. "It was just positioning." He muttered, "Positioning?" I repeated, "It is a lie." My mother slammed the salad bowl onto the counter. A slice of cucumber flew out and landed on the linoleum. "Stop it, Lila!" she snapped. She turned to face me, her eyes flashing. "You always make everything so small. You look at every little detail and you pick it apart. We are trying to build something here. We are trying to secure a future." "For who?" I asked. "For you? Because uninviting me from a party does not feel like you are building a future for me." My mother wiped her hands on her apron. She took a breath, composing herself. The transition was terrifying. One second she was angry. The next she was the picture of maternal concern. "You do not understand the circles we are trying to enter," she said, her voice dropping to a pitying tone. "These people, they judge everything. Appearance, connections, history." She took a step toward me. "Honey, look at you," she said. She gestured vaguely at my outfit, my work slacks, my sensible shoes. "You have worked hard. We are proud of you. But you have a certain heaviness. You wear your struggle on your face." I felt a sting of tears, hot and sudden. "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means," she said, "that when people look at you, they see the work. They see the grind. We needed them to see the result. If you had come last night, looking like you were worried about parking or work, it would have reminded people where we came from. It would have broken the spell." I stared at her. It was the cruelest thing she had ever said to me. She was telling me that I was the stain on their perfect picture, that my reality was the thing they were paying thousands of dollars to hide. I looked at my father. He was studying the pattern on the kitchen rug as if his life depended on it. "Dad?" I said. "Do you agree with this?" He did not look up. "We are under review." "Lila," he said. His voice was barely a murmur. "What?" I asked. "The foundation," he said. "They are reviewing the new members. We have to look substantial. Please, do not ask questions that can't be unasked. Just let us handle it." I backed away from them. I felt sick. I turned to leave, and that was when I saw it. On the granite counter, near the fruit bowl, was a stack of mail. It was the pile my mother usually sorted through on Fridays. Top of the stack was a utility bill. Under that was a flyer for a pizza place. But sticking out from the bottom were 2 envelopes that made me pause. They were high-quality envelopes, the kind with the blue security pattern on the inside. One return address read, Bright Ridge Capital Services. The other read, Northbridge Trust Lending. I knew those names. I worked in logistics. I dealt with invoices and lines of credit for vendors. Bright Ridge was a firm that specialized in high-risk personal loans. Northbridge was a lender that advertised on late-night television. promising approval for people with complex assets. My parents had paid off their mortgage 5 years ago. They used a local credit union for their checking account. They did not deal with capital services or trust lenders. I reached out and picked up the Northbridge envelope. It was unopened. "What is this?" I asked. My mother snatched it from my hand. "It is junk mail," she cried. "Just offers. Everyone gets them." It didn't feel like junk mail. It felt heavy. I looked at my father again. "Dad," I said, "did you borrow money to pay for the donation?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and watery. "Go home, Lila," he said. "Please, just go home." I looked at the woman who had birthed me, clutching the envelope like a weapon. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, shrinking into the corner. I am not the one who broke the spell. "Mom," I said. I walked out the door. I did not stay for the roast. I drove aimlessly for a while, just looping around the city, listening to the radio without hearing the songs. The city lights blurred into streaks of neon. I felt unmoored, as if gravity had decided to stop working just for me. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was a number I did not recognize. A local area code. I answered it through the car's Bluetooth. "Hello? Ms. Simmons?" It was a woman's voice, not Chloe. This voice was older, raspier. It sounded like a woman who smoked slim cigarettes and made difficult decisions. "Speaking," I said. "This is Patricia Vance from the Marrowell Civic Foundation. I am the Director of Donor Relations." I straightened up in my seat. "Yes," I said. "I was at your office today. I heard." Patricia said, "I'm calling to clarify a few things regarding the file. I understand there was some confusion about the paperwork." "There is no confusion." I said, "The information is false. I did not provide it." There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy silence. "Ms. Simmons," Patricia said slowly, "we have a signed pledge commitment on file. It was executed 3 weeks ago. It outlines a donation schedule of $10,000 a month for the next 12 months, secured against the guarantor's assets. Your name is listed as the co-signer." I nearly drove off the road. I slammed on the brakes, pulling into the empty parking lot of a drugstore. "What?" I choked out. "A pledge commitment," Patricia repeated. $10,000 a month. The first installment cleared, but there is a discrepancy with the second draw. The bank flagged the signature verification on the co-signer line. $10,000 a month? That was $120,000. I did not sign anything. I said. My voice was shaking. "I have never seen a pledge commitment. That is concerning," Patricia said. Her tone was not sympathetic. It was calculating, because if the co-signer is invalid, the entire agreement is in default, and given the public nature of the Simmons Family Circle announcement, that would be very messy. For everyone. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. "I am informing you," Patricia said. "Your parents have positioned themselves very aggressively. If the financing collapses now, the foundation will be forced to recoup its marketing costs, and we will be obliged to report the irregularity to the credit bureaus." I felt cold all over. "Send me the document." I said. "I cannot do that," Patricia said. "But I suggest you get your house in order. Ms. Simmons, we need the discrepancy resolved by Monday, or we pull the plug." The line went dead. I sat in the dark parking lot. My heart was hammering against my ribs. $120,000. My parents did not have that kind of money. They didn't have 10% of that kind of money. I grabbed my phone and opened my banking app. My checking account was normal, $2,000 in savings. Then I opened a new tab. I went to the credit reporting site I used once a year to check my score. I typed in my password. I answered the security questions. What was the name of your first pet? What is your mother's maiden name? The dashboard loaded. My score was usually a solid 750. It was now 680. I clicked on the tab labeled Alerts. New account opened. Northbridge Trust Lending. Date: 14 days ago. Type: revolving line of credit. Limit: $15,000. It was not a huge amount. It wasn't the 100,000 Patricia had mentioned. It was small enough to slip under the radar if I wasn't looking, but it was there. $15,000. In my name. Opened 2 weeks ago. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. My mother had said I had a look of the warehouse about me. She had said I didn't understand the circles they were entering. She was right. I didn't understand. I didn't understand how my parents, the people who taught me not to steal candy bars from the grocery store, could steal my identity to buy a seat at a table where they were despised. But the fear was gone now. The panic that had made me whisper to my father, the hurt that had made me cry in the kitchen, it was evaporating. In its place, something cold and hard was settling in. It was the same feeling I got when a shipment went missing and I had to track it down, step by step, until I found the person responsible. They had opened a line of credit. They had forged a pledge. They had made me a co-signer to a debt that could ruin me. I took a screenshot of the credit report. Then I started the car. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to ask them to explain. They had told me not to come. They had told me not to make it weird. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 9 p.m. I was done asking questions that couldn't be unasked. Now, I was going to find answers that couldn't be buried. I pulled out of the parking lot and turned toward home. But my mind was already moving to the next step. I needed help. I needed someone who didn't care about social circles or charity galas. I needed someone who knew how to fight in the mud. My coworker Ben had mentioned a lawyer once, a guy who had helped his cousin with a lemon car dealership that tried to screw him over. I would ask Ben for the name tomorrow, and then I would introduce my parents to the real Lila Simmons, not the senior director, not the loving daughter, the logistics manager, the one who always found the lost cargo. The law office of Elias Thorne was located above a dry cleaner in a strip mall 3 miles from the city center. It smelled faintly of steam and starch. There was no marble in the lobby, just a linoleum floor that had been buffed until it was slippery and a receptionist who was also the paralegal and, I suspected, Elias's wife. Ben had written the name on a sticky note and handed it to me with a grim nod. He eats paperwork for breakfast. Ben had said, he is not fast, but he is thorough. He is the guy you call when you want to bury someone under their own fine print. I sat in a chair upholstered in scratchy tweed. Elias Thorne was a man who looked like he had been carved out of a root vegetable, gnarled, brown, and tough. He was wearing a cardigan over a dress shirt that had seen better decades. He listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, his eyes fixed on the water stain on the ceiling tiles. When I finished explaining the text message, the credit report, the call from Patricia Vance, and the uninvited gala, Elias finally looked at me. "You want to scream at them," he said. His voice was gravelly, like tires on a dirt road. "Yes," I said. "I want to go over there and scream until the windows break." "Don't," Elias said. He picked up a yellow legal pad and clicked a cheap ballpoint pen. "Anger is good fuel, Ms. Simmons, but it is a terrible driver. If you go in there screaming, they will close ranks. They will hide the paper. They will gaslight you until you think you are the one who is crazy. You said your mother already tried to tell you it was a misunderstanding?" "Yes," I said. "Then she is already building her defense," he said. "She is rewriting the narrative. If you confront them now, you are just giving them more material to work with." He leaned forward, the springs of his chair groaning. "We need the paper," he said. "You have the credit report. That is good. But we need the source documents, the pledge, the signature card, the internal correspondence from the foundation. You are a donor. Theoretically, you have rights to access your own file. They stonewalled me," I said. "They told me I needed my father's permission." Elias smiled. It was a small, dry expression. "Write a letter," he said. "Not an email, a letter, certified mail, requesting a copy of all agreements bearing your name or social security number for verification purposes. Cite the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Do not mention fraud yet. Just mention accuracy. Make them think you are just doing your taxes." "And then?" I asked. "And then we wait," Elias said. "We let them hand us the shovel they used to dig the hole." I left his office feeling lighter. Not because the problem was solved, but because it had a shape now. It was not a ghost story anymore. It was a process. I sent the letter the next morning. I typed it up on my work computer, using the template Elias had emailed me. It was dry, boring, and bureaucratic. I mailed it from the post office on my lunch break, paying extra for the return receipt. 3 days later, a large envelope arrived at my apartment. The return address was the Marowell Civic Foundation. I sat at my kitchen table and opened it with a knife. Inside was a glossy folder containing a welcome packet and a single photocopy of a document titled Community Pledge Commitment, the Simmons Family Circle. I smoothed the paper out on the table. There it was, the number that Patricia Vance had threatened me with, pledge amount, $120,000. Schedule, monthly installments of $10,000, and at the bottom, 2 signature lines. Primary guarantor, Robert Simmons. Co-signer, Lila Simmons. I stared at the signature next to my name. It was a good forgery. I had to give them that. It had the sharp slant of my L and the way I crossed my T with a slight upward angle. If I were a bank teller glancing at it in a hurry, I would have cleared it. But I was not a bank teller. I was the owner of the hand that was supposed to have written it. I looked closer. The S in Simmons was too round. I wrote my S with a sharp loop at the bottom. A habit from grade school cursive lessons I had never abandoned. This S was soft, balloon-like. It was my mother's S. She had signed it. My father was the primary guarantor, but my mother had forged my name. It was a team effort, a family project. I felt a wave of nausea, hot and sour. It was one thing to suspect it. It was another thing to see the ink on the page. They had sat at their dining room table, probably with a cup of coffee and the news playing in the background, and she had practiced my signature until she got it right enough to pass. I took a picture of the document and emailed it to Elias. Then I went for a walk. I couldn't stay in the apartment. The walls felt too close. I walked down to the marina, where the air smelled of salt and diesel. I needed to be around things that were real. Boats, ropes, water, things that followed the laws of physics, not the laws of social climbing. I was standing by the railing, watching a trawler unload crates of crab, when a voice called out from the boardwalk, "Lila? Lila Simmons?" I turned. It was Mrs. Gable. She was a woman I had known since I was 6 years old. She and my mother used to be in the same book club, the kind where they drank wine and never actually read the book. She was wearing a tennis outfit, though I knew for a fact she had bad knees and hadn't played in a decade. "Mrs. Gable," I said, forcing a smile. "It is good to see you." She rushed over and squeezed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Oh, honey, I am so glad I ran into you," she said. Her eyes were wide and glittering with the peculiar hunger of a gossip who has found a fresh meal. I saw the pictures from the gala. "Your parents looked magnificent, just magnificent. Thank you," I said, but I was so confused. She continued, leaning in. "I heard they are part of the Harborcrest Meridian Society now." The name meant nothing to me. Harborcrest Meridian Society? "I think so," I stammered. Mrs. Gable nodded, her bobbed hair bouncing. "Yes, that is what your mother told me at the grocery store. She said they were founding members, that they were spearheading a new direction for the city's philanthropy. She said the Simmons family was finally taking its rightful place." She paused, looking at me with a critical eye. "She said you were spearheading the youth outreach. Mrs. Gable said that you were going to be the face of the junior board." I felt the blood leave my face. "She said that?" I asked. "Oh, yes," Mrs. Gable said. She was quite specific. She said you were just so passionate about it that you insisted on being involved. I looked at the water. The trawler was winching a net up, the gears grinding. Mrs. Gable lowered her voice. "Between you and me, Lila," she said, "people were surprised. We always thought your father was a bit more traditional. With his finances, the Harborcrest Meridian Society, that is a big step. That is the heavy hitters." She emphasized the words heavy hitters with a raised eyebrow. It certainly is. I said. I extricated myself from her grip, pleading a work call. I walked back to my car, my mind racing. Harborcrest Meridian Society. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled out my phone. I searched the name, nothing, no website, no news articles, no registered nonprofit status. I searched the state's business registry, nothing. It didn't exist. My parents were not just joining a club, they were inventing one, or they were being sold a membership to a ghost. The following Sunday, the Marrowell Civic Foundation hosted a community gratitude brunch. It was an open event, held on the lawn of the foundation's headquarters. The email invitation I received, because I was now on their list as a confirmed attendee, said it was a celebration of the gala's success. Elias had told me to gather documents, but documents only told you what happened. People told you why. I put on a floral dress that I hated, something soft and feminine that made me look harmless. I put on sunglasses. I drove to the arts district. The lawn was crowded. There were white tents, jazz musicians playing softly in the corner, and tables laden with pastries and fruit. I moved through the crowd, keeping my head down. I didn't see my parents. They were likely in the VIP tent, shielding themselves from the common donors who only gave $50 a month. I grabbed a glass of iced tea and stood near a cluster of high-top tables where a group of women were talking. They were wearing hats and expensive linen. Disaster averted, if you ask me. One woman was saying, she had a sharp nose and a voice that carried, "I heard the main sponsor pulled out on Tuesday." Another woman whispered, "Tuesday. Can you imagine? The entire budget was based on that check." "Who was it?" the third asked. "Tech Dynamics," the sharp-nosed woman said. "They got hit with that lawsuit and froze all their charitable giving. The foundation was scrambling. I heard Patricia was practically hyperventilating. So how did they fix it?" "They found a patch," the woman said. "A family with a clean story. Someone local. Someone who looked like the salt of the earth but had the capital to back it up. You know, to ground the image, make it look less like corporate interest and more like community spirit." "The Simmons family?" the third woman asked. "Exactly," the sharp-nosed woman said. "I heard they stepped in at the 11th hour, rescued the gala. That is why they got the head table. That is why the daughter is being pushed so hard." I stood there, the condensation from the iced tea glass dripping onto my hand. A family with a clean story, that was it. That was the commodity. My parents didn't have money. They had debt. But they had a story. Retired schoolteacher and a contractor, lived in the same house for 40 years. And me, the daughter with the college degree and the steady job and the clean record. I was the collateral. I was the proof that they were safe, reliable, and solvent. Tech Dynamics had bailed, leaving a hole in the budget and a hole in the credibility of the event. The foundation needed a replacement fast. They needed someone who wouldn't ask too many questions and who looked good on a brochure. My parents had volunteered, and they had offered me up as the sacrifice. I turned away from the women, my stomach churning. I walked toward the main building. The restrooms were inside, and I needed to splash cold water on my face. As I entered the lobby, I saw a young man in a foundation t-shirt carrying a box of files. He dropped the box on a table and sighed, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Heavy?" I asked. He looked up. "Oh, hey, yeah, just clearing out the war room, the gala prep files. Thank God it's over." He looked to be about 22, an intern or a junior volunteer. He had the exhausted eyes of someone who had been yelled at for a week straight. "I bet." I said, "I heard it was crazy at the end." With the sponsor dropping out, he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Crazy? It was a nightmare. We had to reprint the entire program in 48 hours. Do you know how hard it is to scrub a logo off 3,000 booklets?" He gestured to the box. "I spent 6 hours just replacing the donor bios," he said. "We had to copy-paste the new text from the emergency draft." "Emergency draft?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "The one the board approved on Wednesday." He pulled a bottle of water from his pocket and took a swig. I looked at the box. It was overflowing with papers. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice casual. I am actually looking for a copy of the script. My parents. They missed the opening remarks, and they wanted to read what was said. The kid shrugged. It should be in there. Just look for the folder marked Final Vi 3. Or maybe V4. I honestly lost count. He walked away toward the break room. I stood alone in the lobby. I opened the box. It was a mess of drafts, invoices, and frantic notes scribbled on napkins. I dug through the layers until I found a manila folder labeled Scripts/Speech. I opened it. There were 3 versions of the opening speech. I pulled out the one dated 4 days before the gala. I scanned the text. It was the usual fluff. Welcome, friends. Look at what we have achieved. Please give us money. Then I saw the highlighted section on page 2. We are especially grateful to our new community anchors, the Simmons family, who have demonstrated that leadership begins at home. We want to thank Lila Simmons for her extraordinary pledge of support, a testament to the success of our local professionals. The text was bolded. Next to it, in red pen, someone had written, "Make sure camera finds her at table 8. I flipped the page. There was a printed email stapled to the back of the draft. It was dated the Tuesday before the event. From rsimmons55@email.com. My father's email address. To pvance@marowellcivic.org. Patricia, we are finalizing the arrangement. We understand the requirement for the initial deposit. We will bring the check tomorrow. Regarding the public profile, we agree to the terms. Lila is on board. She understands the necessity of the immediate commitment to secure the seat. She is happy to lend her name to the initiative. Lila is on board. I read the line 3 times. My father had written it. He had sat at his computer and typed those words. Lila is on board. He knew I wasn't. He hadn't even asked me. He had lied to them, and he had lied to me, and he had done it to secure a seat at a table. I took the document. I folded it carefully and put it in my purse. I walked out of the building. The sun was shining on the brunch. People were laughing. My mother was probably out there somewhere, eating a melon ball and telling someone how proud she was of her daughter. I drove straight to their house. I didn't call first. I didn't want to give them time to prepare. Their car was in the driveway. They must have left the brunch early. I walked up the path. The hydrangeas were blooming, big blue heads nodding in the breeze. I used my key. They were in the living room. My father was taking off his tie. My mother was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. "Lila," my mother said, looking up. Her smile was tight. "We didn't know you were coming. We were just at the brunch. It was lovely. You should have—" I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded papers. I dropped them on the coffee table. The photocopy of the pledge with the forged signature, the email where my father said I was on board. My mother looked at the papers. She didn't move to touch them. My father froze, his tie half undone. "What is this?" my mother asked, though her voice lacked its usual force. "It is the lie," I said. I stood in the center of the room. I didn't yell. I felt incredibly cold, like I was made of ice. I went to the foundation. I said, "I have the records. I know about the pledge, $120,000. I know about the forgery, and I know you told them I agreed to it." My father sat down heavily in the armchair. He looked suddenly very old. "Lila," he said, "it isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I asked. "Because it looks like grand larceny. It looks like fraud. It looks like you sold me to cover a debt you couldn't pay." "No," my mother cried. She stood up. "We didn't sell you. We were including you." "Including me?" I pointed at the paper. "You forged my signature. Mom, you signed my name to a 6-figure debt. It was just a placeholder," my father blurted out. I turned to him. "A placeholder?" "We needed to secure the spot," he said. His hands were shaking. "The foundation." "Patricia." She said the window was closing. Tech Dynamics pulled out. They needed a commitment immediately. If we didn't sign right then, we would have lost the opportunity. We would have been pushed back to the general donor list. "So you used my name?" I asked. "We intended to replace it," he said, his voice rising in desperation. "It was temporary. Just until we got the consulting contract. I have a lead. Lila. A big one. Once that money comes in, we were going to pay off the pledge and take your name off. You were never supposed to know. I stared at him. The delusion was absolute. You were never supposed to know. And the credit line? I asked. The Northbridge loan? Operating capital, he whispered. To make the first payment. I looked at my mother. She was standing by the window, her arms crossed tight over her chest. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the street, as if checking if the neighbors were watching. Why? I asked. Why is this so important? Why do you need to be in this society so badly that you would go to prison for it? My mother spun around. Her face was twisted with an emotion I couldn't place. It wasn't regret. It was indignation. Because we have waited, she shouted. The sound shocked me. My mother never shouted. We have waited 30 years. Lila, she said, we did everything right. We paid our bills. We went to church. We raised you. And what did we get? We got ignored. We got the table by the kitchen at weddings. We got the polite nods at the grocery store. She walked toward me, her eyes blazing. The Harbor Crest Society. It is the top. Lila, it is the people who matter. If we are in, we are protected. We are someone. You are someone without them. I said. No, she said, shaking her head violently. That is what you think, because you are satisfied with being small. You are satisfied with your little apartment and your little job. But we wanted more. We wanted more for us. And for you. For me? I laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. You stole from me. I was protecting you, she screamed. The room went silent. Protecting me? I asked. If we fell. You would fall too, she said. Her voice dropped to a hiss. Do you think you exist in a vacuum? You are a Simmons. If we are nobodies, you are a nobody. If we are bankrupt, people look at you differently. Reputation is not yours. Lila, it is ours. It is a shared asset. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the fear behind the makeup. I saw the desperate, clawing need to be validated by strangers. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as a limb, a piece of herself that she could cut, or leverage, or sell, because it belonged to her. You are wrong. I said. I picked up the papers from the coffee table. Reputation is not a shared asset. Mom, it is an individual boundary, and you just crossed it. I turned to my father. I am giving you 24 hours. I said. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. To do what? He asked. To call the foundation. I said. To tell them it was a mistake, to withdraw the pledge, to close the credit line, and to take my name off everything. And if we don't? My mother asked. Her voice was challenging, as if she didn't believe I would actually do anything. I looked at the signature on the page, the loop that was too round. If you don't, I said, I will give these to my attorney, and he will file a police report for identity theft and fraud. My father gasped. Lila, you wouldn't. We are your parents. Then start acting like it. I said. I walked to the door. I didn't look back. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were trembling so hard I couldn't get the key in the ignition. I sat there for a minute, breathing in the smell of the hot plastic dashboard. I had given them an ultimatum, but as I drove away, watching the yellow bungalow disappear in the rearview mirror, I knew they wouldn't do it. They were too deep in. They believed the lie too much. They would try to fix it, try to maneuver, try to gaslight me again. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I was still the daughter who ate the burnt toast so they could have the good pieces. They were about to find out that I was done eating the burnt toast. I drove toward the city, toward the law office above the dry cleaner. I needed to tell Elias to get the paperwork ready, because the war hadn't started yet. This was just the opening shot, and I had a feeling that when the walls came down, they were going to come down on top of all of us. The fluorescent light in Elias Thorne's office buzzed with a sound like a trapped fly. I was sitting in the tweed chair again, watching him read the photocopy of the pledge agreement I had placed on his desk. He read it slowly, his finger tracing the lines of text, pausing at the signature that looked like mine but wasn't. "So," he said, finally looking up, "they call it a placeholder." "Yes," I said. "My father said it was temporary, just until a real sponsor came through or they got a consulting contract to cover it." Elias took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Lila," he said, his voice gravelly, "there is no such thing as temporary fraud. In the eyes of the law, the moment that pen touched the paper with the intent to deceive a financial institution, the crime was complete. It does not matter if they intended to pay it back next week. It does not matter if they intended to replace the document. The instrument exists. The liability exists." He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "And because financial instruments are involved, specifically a line of credit from Northbridge Trust and Lending, this is not just a family dispute. It is bank fraud. If the foundation used this pledge to secure their own financing or to report solvency to their board, it ripples outward. What do I do?" I asked. "I gave them 24 hours to fix it." Elias shook his head. "Do not wait for them," he said. "They are drowning, and drowning people will climb on top of anyone to get a breath of air. We need to sever the tie. I am going to draft a formal notice of fraud and unauthorized representation. We will send it to the Marrowell Civic Foundation and to Northbridge Trust. We will state clearly that you did not sign these documents, that you do not authorize the debt, and that any use of your identity is void." He paused, looking at me with a grim expression. "You understand what this will do," he said. "Once we send this, the bells cannot be unrung. The bank will freeze the account. The foundation will have to investigate. Your parents will be exposed." I looked at the forged signature on the desk. I thought about the text message telling me not to come. I thought about the $120,000 hanging over my head. "Send it," I said. I went back to work, but my mind was miles away. I sat at my desk, moving pallets of shipping containers around on a screen, trying to pretend that my life wasn't collapsing. At 2 p.m, my cell phone rang. The caller ID said, "Northbridge Trust Lending." I stared at it. Elias had said we would contact them. I wasn't expecting them to call me. I picked up the phone. "This is Lila Simmons. Ms. Simmons. This is Marcus Dean from the verification department at Northbridge," a man's voice said. He sounded young, bored, and efficient. "I am calling regarding the pending draw on the Simmons family portfolio. We have hit a snag with the employment verification." I felt a cold spike of adrenaline. "What snag?" I asked. "Well," Marcus said, "the file lists you as a senior director at Logistics Management Solutions. But when we ran the standard employment check through the database, it came back listing you as a coordinator. The salary discrepancy is significant. It affects the debt-to-income ratio for the collateral." He paused, waiting for me to explain. "We just need you to send over a current pay stub to clear it up." He continued, "Otherwise, we cannot release the next tier of funds to the foundation, and I know your father is anxious to get that processed. He called 3 times this morning. He called 3 times. My father was pushing the gas pedal while the car was driving off a cliff." I took a breath. "Mr. Dean," I said, "I cannot send you a pay stub for a senior director position because I am not a senior director. I am a coordinator. The information on that application is incorrect." There was a silence on the other end. The typing I had heard in the background stopped. "Incorrect?" Marcus asked. His tone shifted from bored to alert. "Ms. Simmons, you are listed as the co-signer. Are you saying the application contains errors?" "I am saying I never saw the application." I said, "I see," Marcus said. His voice was very professional now, very cold. "Ms. Simmons, this is a secured line of credit. It is backed by the primary guarantor's real estate assets, specifically, the property at 42 Oak Street. If the application is fraudulent, that triggers an immediate default clause. The collateral could be at risk." The room seemed to tilt. 42 Oak Street, that was my parents' house. They hadn't just used my name to get a loan. They had put their own home, the house I grew up in, the only asset they actually owned, on the table, and they had tied me to it. If I blew the whistle, the bank would foreclose. If I didn't, I was liable for a debt I couldn't pay. "Ms. Simmons? Marcus asked. Are you still there? I need to check my records. I stammered. I will call you back. I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone on the desk. They had bet the house. Literally. I left work early again. I didn't care if I got fired. I had bigger problems than shipping manifests. I drove to 42 Oak Street. The car was in the driveway. The house looked peaceful, the yellow siding glowing in the afternoon sun. It looked like the home of a nice, retired couple who gardened and watched game shows. I let myself in. Mom? Dad? I called out. The house was silent. I walked into the kitchen. There was a half-eaten sandwich on the counter. My mother's purse was on the chair. They were here, probably in the backyard or the garage. I looked at the dining room table. It was covered in paper. It looked like a war room. There were stacks of folders, a laptop open to a spreadsheet, and a calculator. I walked over to the table. I could hear the faint sound of the hose running in the backyard. My father was watering the roses. I moved quickly. I took my phone out and started photographing everything. First, the document in the center of the table. It was a pledge schedule from the Marrowell Civic Foundation. Total commitment, $120,000. Received to date, $10,000. Next due, $10,000. Overdue. Next to it was a letter from a bank I didn't recognize. First Coastal Savings, Dear Mr. Simmons, we regret to inform you that your request for a home equity line increase has been declined due to insufficient income verification. They had tried to get more money from the house and failed. That was why they went to Northbridge. That was why they needed me. My salary as a senior director was the tipping point that got the loan approved. Then I saw the spreadsheet on the laptop screen. It was titled, Projected Returns, Q3. I zoomed in with my camera. It was a list of names. Councilman Miller, the unexpected Tech Dynamics VP, the director of the Port Authority. Next to each name was a dollar amount. Miller, $5,000, consulting retainer. Port Authority, $8,000, logistics contract. Foundation Board, $15,000, referral fees. I stared at the screen. They weren't just buying status. They were treating the gala like an investment scheme. They believed, truly believed, that if they spent this money to get into the room, these people would turn around and give them contracts, jobs, and money. They had itemized their delusions. I heard the back door slide open. I slipped my phone into my pocket and turned around. My father walked in, wiping his hands on a rag. He froze when he saw me standing by the table. Lila, he said, you put the house up. I said, I didn't say hello. I didn't ask how he was. He blinked, looking at the papers on the table, then back at me. Northbridge called me. I said, they told me the loan is secured by the property. You put the house up as collateral for a loan signed with my name. My father slumped. He pulled out a dining chair and sat down, not at the head of the table, but on the side, like a guest. It was the only way. He said softly, the equity was there. It was just sitting there. Lila, dead money. It is your home. Dad, I said, it is where you live. It is an asset, he snapped, a sudden flash of anger breaking through his exhaustion. You think small. Lila, you always have. You think money is something you hoard in a savings account. Money is a tool. You use it to make things happen. To make what happen? I pointed at the spreadsheet. To get consulting contracts from people who don't even know you? He looked at the laptop screen. They will know me, he said. Once we are in the inner circle, once we are Harbor Crest members, that is how business is done in this town. You buy the dinner, you shake the hand, and then the contracts come. I am a good contractor. Lila, I know buildings. I could consult for the city. I just need the introduction. He sounded desperate. He sounded like a gambler explaining his system while the chips were being raked away. Dad, I said, these people, they are not going to hire you because you bought a table. They are going to drink your champagne and laugh at you because you spent money you didn't have. He put his head in his hands. We are behind. He whispered, the credit cards are maxed. The pension isn't enough anymore. The roof needs repairs. The car needs a transmission. We were drowning. Lila. Slowly, just eroding. I looked at him, a man I had admired my whole life, now reduced to a terrifying mixture of victim and predator. So you decided to drown me too? I asked. We were going to fix it, he cried. One big contract. That is all we needed. Just one? Then we pay off the loan. We fix your credit, and everyone wins. My mother walked in from the hallway. She had heard us. Her face was pale, but her eyes were hard. You are so selfish, she said. I turned to her. I am selfish? She walked into the room, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. You come in here, judging us, she said. You with your steady paycheck and your boring life. You don't know what it is like to be invisible, to have lived here for 40 years and still be treated like a guest. She gestured at the window, at the neighborhood outside. I have organized the bake sales, she said. I have volunteered at the library. I have done everything right. And still, when the Meridian Society list comes out, who is on it? The Hendersons, the Vances, people who moved here 5 years ago, because they have money, because they have the shine. She touched her own face, as if feeling for the shine she lacked. I just wanted to be inside. She whispered, just once. I wanted to walk into a room and have people stop and say, there are the Simmonses. They belong here. She looked at me, and her expression curdled into something like pity. And I wanted to bring you with us, she said. But you fight it. You want to stay on the outside. I looked at the spreadsheet again, the calculated returns, the desperation masked as ambition. Mom, I said, the Harborcrest Meridian Society isn't real. She froze. What? I looked it up. I said, it is not a nonprofit. It is not a registered organization. It is a marketing tier. It is just a name the foundation gives to people who donate over $50,000. It is a gold star sticker. Mom, it doesn't mean anything. No, she said, shaking her head. No, they have meetings. They have a crest. They have a branding agency. I said, you didn't join a society. You bought a product. She stared at me, her mouth working silently. For a second, I saw the crack in the veneer. I saw the terrifying realization that she had sold her soul for a coupon code. But then the wall came back up. She straightened her spine. You don't know what you are talking about, she said coldly. You are just trying to hurt us because you are jealous. Jealous? I asked, incredulous. Jealous that we are doing something with our lives, she said. That we have vision. I picked up my phone. I am not jealous. Mom, I said, I am terrified. Because you have bet your house and my name on a vision that is going to leave you homeless. I walked to the door. Elias is sending the letter. I said, I am stopping this. My father stood up. Lila, please, if you send that letter, the house. You should have thought about the house before you forged my signature. I said. I walked out. I felt like I was cutting off my own arm. But I knew that if I stayed attached, the gangrene would kill me too. That night, I was sitting on my couch, staring at the wall, when my email chimed. It was a personal email, sent to my Gmail account. The sender was anonymous guest 88 at protonmail.com. The subject line was, Your parents. I opened it. Lila. The message read, I don't know what is going on, but you need to know what they are saying. I was at the cocktail hour tonight at the club. Your mother is telling people you bailed on the pledge last minute. She is saying you had a mental health crisis and couldn't handle the pressure of the commitment. She is playing the victim. Lila. People are asking questions. They are saying you left them holding the bag. Watch your back. I felt the blood rush to my ears. They were pivoting. I had threatened to expose the truth, so they were preemptively destroying my credibility. They were painting me as unstable, as the problem. If I came forward now and said they forged my signature, people would say, Oh, that poor girl. She is having a breakdown. Her parents are just trying to cover for her. It was brilliant. It was evil. And it was my mother. My phone rang. It was Elias. Lila. He said, It is late. I know. But we got a response. Already? I asked. Faxed over 10 minutes ago, he said, from the legal department at the Marrowell Civic Foundation. Read it to me, I said. Elias cleared his throat. The sound of paper rustling came through the line. Dear Mr. Thorne, regarding your inquiry into the Simmons Family Circle Pledge, the Foundation operates in good faith based on the representations of its donors. We possess documentation indicating that the Simmons family functions as a consolidated philanthropic entity, while Ms. Simmons may not have physically signed every instrument. Our records indicate she authorized representation through family agency. Furthermore, we must note that the benefits of the donation, specifically the publicity and professional positioning, were accepted and utilized by Ms. Simmons, as evidenced by her inclusion in the event materials. Any attempt to retroactively disavow the pledge will be viewed as a breach of contract. I gripped the phone. Authorized representation through family agency? I asked. What does that mean? It means, Elias said, his voice grim, that they are claiming your parents had your permission to sign for you, and because you didn't scream the second you saw your name on the flyer, because you accepted the benefits of the publicity, they are arguing you were complicit. They are trapping me. I said, they are protecting the money. Elias said, if they admit the pledge is fraud, they have to give the money back. They have to admit their vetting process is garbage. It is easier for them to argue that you are a remorseful donor trying to wiggle out of a deal than to admit they accepted a forged document. So I am either the silent accomplice or the scapegoat. I said, exactly. Elias said, if we fight this, it is going to get ugly. They are going to depose your parents. Your parents are going to lie under oath to save themselves, and the Foundation is going to use its lawyers to crush you. I looked at the dark window of my apartment. I saw my reflection. I looked tired. I looked small, but I also looked like someone who had nothing left to lose. File the fraud notice with the bank. Elias. I said, Lila. He warned. That triggers the default. Your parents will lose the house. I thought about the spreadsheet. I thought about the lie my mother was telling at the cocktail club. I thought about the mental health crisis they had invented for me. They already lost the house. Elias, I said, they just haven't admitted it yet. I hung up. I walked to my closet and pulled out the shoebox where I kept my important papers. My birth certificate, my passport. I was alone. My parents were enemies. The Foundation was a hostile entity. The bank was a predator. But I had the truth, and I had the photos on my phone. I sat down at my computer. I opened a new document. Title: Timeline of Events. I started typing. Date: October 14th. Event: Received text message from mother. Don't come. If they wanted a story, I would give them a story. But it wasn't going to be the one about the unstable daughter. It was going to be the one about the house of cards. I worked until 3 a.m. When I finally fell asleep, I didn't dream of velvet curtains. I dreamed of a wrecking ball, swinging slow and heavy, coming right for the yellow bungalow on Oak Street. The summons arrived via courier, a heavy cream envelope delivered to my desk at work. It was not a legal notice, not exactly. It was an invitation, embossed with the Marrowell Civic Foundation's seal, requesting my presence at a strategic alignment discussion at 4 o'clock that afternoon. I held the card in my hand. The paper was thick, expensive, and felt like a bribe. Elias, my attorney, had advised me not to speak to them without him present, but the invitation had a handwritten note at the bottom, signed by Patricia Vance. Please, we can resolve the Northbridge matter today, off the record. I did not call Elias. I wanted to look them in the eye. I wanted to see the architecture of the lie up close before I tore it down. I walked into the Foundation's headquarters at 3:55. The receptionist, Chloe, the one who had tried to stonewall me days earlier, did not smile this time. She looked at me with the wide, frightened eyes of someone watching a bomb disposal unit walk past. They are waiting for you in the Meridian Room, she whispered. The Meridian Room was a glass-walled aquarium on the top floor, overlooking the harbor. It was designed to make you feel like a god looking down on the little people. 3 people were waiting for me. Patricia Vance sat at the far end of the mahogany table. She looked smaller than she sounded on the phone, a woman held together by hairspray and anxiety. To her right was a man I recognized from the gala photos, Arthur Harriman, a board member with a face like a clenched fist and a suit that cost more than my car. And to her left was a stranger. He was younger, perhaps 40, with a predatory stillness to him. He was wearing a suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life and no tie. He looked like the kind of man who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes. "Ms. Simmons," the stranger said. He stood up, smoothing his jacket. "I am Julian Vale, Keystone and Vale Strategies, a PR consultant. They had brought in a fixer." I did not shake his hand. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Placing my purse on the table with a deliberate thud, I assumed this was a legal meeting. I said, "Since you are holding a fraudulent pledge in my name." Julian smiled. It was a practiced expression, warm and utterly empty. "Let us not use words like fraud just yet. Lila, may I call you Lila? We are here to find a solution that benefits everyone, a path of least resistance." He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. I looked at it. It was a press release. For immediate release, the Simmons family and the Marrowell Civic Foundation wish to clarify a clerical misunderstanding regarding the recent pledge commitment. Due to an administrative error in the processing of the donor profile, the timeline of the gift was misstated. Lila Simmons remains a supporter of the Foundation's mission, and the Simmons family continues their patronage. I read it twice. A clerical misunderstanding. I looked up at Julian. "Exactly," Julian said. His voice was smooth, like oil pouring over broken glass. "Here is the offer. Lila, you sign off on this statement. You acknowledge that there was confusion regarding the paperwork. Perhaps you verbally agreed but hadn't reviewed the final schedule. In exchange, the Foundation will administratively correct the pledge amount to 0. We will issue a letter to Northbridge Trust stating the loan application was filed in error, and we will pay off the balance immediately." He leaned forward. "The debt goes away. The foreclosure threat vanishes. Your parents keep their house. The Foundation keeps its reputation. And you get to go back to your life. No lawyers, no court cases, just a misunderstanding." I looked at Patricia. She was staring at her hands. I looked at Harriman. He was looking out the window. Bored. "You want me to lie?" I said. "We want you to contextualize the truth," Julian corrected. "You want me to say I was confused." I said, "You want me to look like an incompetent daughter who didn't know what she was agreeing to, so that you can cover up the fact that you accepted a forged signature." Julian sighed, a sound of professional disappointment. "Lila, look at the alternative. If you pursue this fraud claim, you indict your parents. This is not just about the Foundation. If you prove the signature is fake, your parents go to prison. Is that what you want? To put your mother in a cell over a piece of paper?" The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, a low, sterile sound. It was a perfect trap. They were using my own morality against me. They knew I was angry, but they were betting that I wasn't ruthless. They were betting that I would swallow the humiliation to save my father from a felony charge. I looked at the press release again. Lila Simmons remains a supporter. I slid the paper back across the table. "No," I said. Julian's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "I don't think you understand the leverage here," he said. "I understand perfectly." I said, "You are terrified." I turned to Harriman, the board member. He finally looked at me. "Mr. Harriman," I said, "I have a question, and I want you to answer it. Not your parrot here." Harriman frowned. "Watch your tone, young lady." "Why was my name necessary?" I asked. The room went still. "What?" Harriman asked. "If my parents had the house as collateral," I said, "and they were willing to sign the pledge, why did you need me? Why did you need Lila Simmons, the logistics coordinator? I don't have money. I don't have influence. My credit score is decent, but it's not enough to swing a $100,000 deal. So why did you forge my name? Why not just take my father's money and leave me out of it?" Harriman shifted in his chair. He glanced at Patricia. "It was a structural requirement." Patricia stammered. For the Legacy Initiative. No. I said, I don't believe you. You don't risk bank fraud for a brochure. You needed me for something else. I looked at Harriman. I held his gaze. Who were you performing for? I asked. Harriman's face turned a shade of red that clashed with his tie. He slammed his hand on the table. Because the sponsor demanded it, he barked. Julian closed his eyes, a flicker of pain crossing his face. He knew the slip had just happened. I leaned in. Which sponsor? Tech Dynamics, Harriman shouted, losing his composure. The VP called us 3 days before the gala. He said the donor list looked like a retirement home. He said if we didn't have a credible community face, someone under 40, someone with a real job, someone who wasn't just inheriting money or laundering a reputation, he was pulling his match. He pointed a shaking finger at me. We didn't have anyone, he said. The other young donors? They were trust fund kids, party boys, risks. We needed a professional. We needed a clean story. Your parents offered you up. They said you were perfect, stable, boring, respectable. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. Stable, boring, respectable. That was my value. I wasn't a person. I was a prop to reassure a corporate sponsor that the foundation wasn't just a club for geriatrics and grifters. So you used my resume to secure a corporate match. I said, that is why the pledge had to be in my name, to prove I was invested. It was standard practice, Harriman insisted, though he looked less sure now. We were under pressure. And the others? I asked. Harriman stopped. What others? I remembered the gossip at the brunch. A family with a clean story. I am not the only one. Am I? I asked. You didn't just pressure my parents. You pressured other families. Soft pledges that became firm commitments. Signatures that were just placeholders. Patricia made a small, whimpering sound. Julian Vale stood up. I think this meeting is concluded, he said sharply. Leela, take the settlement. It is the best offer you will get. If you walk out that door, we will release a statement saying that you authorized the pledge and are now reneging due to financial instability. We will ruin you before you ever get to court. I stood up. I picked up my purse. You can try. Julian, I said, but I am not the one who just admitted to defrauding a corporate sponsor in front of a witness. I walked to the door. Lila, wait. Patricia called out. I didn't look back. I walked out of the glass room, past the terrified receptionist, and into the elevator. My legs were shaking, but my mind was clear. They were not just sloppy, they were corrupt. The entire gala was a house of cards built on forged identities and coerced debt. I reached the lobby, and the doors slid open. My parents were standing there. They must have been waiting. Julian or Patricia must have called them to ensure they were on site, ready to apply the emotional pressure if the legal pressure failed. My father looked like a ghost. His skin was gray, his eyes hollow. My mother was pacing, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Lila, my father said. He reached out a hand, then dropped it. Did you sign it? I looked at him. No. Dad, I didn't. He let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He slumped onto a waiting bench. Oh, God, he whispered. Oh, God. Why, Dad? I asked. I stood over him. I didn't sit. Why did you do it? He looked up at me, his eyes wet. I didn't read it. He said, What? The paper. He said, The night we signed it. Patricia put it in front of me. She said it was just a formality. She said, This locks in the seat. Your mother was standing there, staring at me. She wanted it so bad. Lila. She was vibrating with it. He rubbed his face. I felt trapped. He whispered, If I said no. I was the failure. I was the one keeping her down. I was the one ruining the dream. So I signed. I didn't know it was a lien on the house. I swear. I thought it was just a pledge. I thought I could fix it later. He was pathetic. He was a man who had been slowly hollowed out by 30 years of his wife's ambition until there was nothing left but a yes man in a rented tuxedo. I felt a surge of pity, but I crushed it. Pity was dangerous. Pity was what got the house mortgaged in the first place. And you? I turned to my mother. Did you feel trapped too? My mother stopped pacing. She turned to face me. She didn't look broken. She looked furious. You are enjoying this, aren't you? She said. Enjoying it? I asked. Mom, I am trying to save you from being homeless. No, she spat. You are trying to humiliate me. You walked into that meeting upstairs and you played the righteous victim. You love it. You love being the one with the power for once. She took a step closer. You are so small. Lila, she said. Her voice was venomous. You have always been small. You don't have vision. You don't have drive. You just have your rules. This is the rule. That is the rule. You would burn down a palace just because you didn't like the zoning permit. I stared at her. A palace? I asked. It is a fraud. Mom, it is a lie. It is how the world works, she screamed. People in the lobby turned to look. She didn't care. Everyone fakes it until they make it. Lila, everyone. The Hendersons? Do you think they had the cash when they started? No. They leveraged. They took risks. But you are too cowardly to take a risk, so you punish us because we were brave enough to try. I looked at this woman, this stranger in the expensive dress. She had fused her soul so completely with the idea of status that she couldn't distinguish between a crime and an opportunity. To her, I wasn't the victim of identity theft. I was the saboteur of her destiny. I am not punishing you, I said quietly. I am divorcing you. I walked past them. Lila, my father called, his voice cracking. Lila, please. My mother didn't call my name. She just stood there, watching me leave. Her face set in a mask of hate. I walked to my car. I got in and locked the door. My phone buzzed. It was an email notification. I expected it to be from Julian, sending the threat he had promised, but it wasn't. The sender was internal archive at marowellcivic.org. I frowned. That was an internal domain. I opened the message. There was no body text, just an attachment, a forwarded email chain. I looked at the timestamp. It was dated 5 days before the gala. From Patricia Vance. To Arthur Harriman. Subject, the Simmons problem. Arthur, the parents are wavering on the amount. The father is nervous, but the mother is desperate. I told them we need the full commitment to satisfy the tech dynamics requirement. They are offering the daughter as the guarantor. I know we don't have the daughter's signature, but the mother says to proceed. She says, use Lila Simmons as confirmed. Parents requested. Do I have approval to process the pledge without the wet signature from the daughter? We are running out of time. Below that was the reply from Arthur Harriman. Process it. We will get the paper later. Just get the name on the donor wall before the live stream. I stared at the screen. This was it. This wasn't just my parents lying to the foundation. This was the foundation knowingly processing a fraudulent pledge. Harriman had authorized it in writing. Process it. We will get the paper later. They knew I hadn't signed. They knew it was fake. And they did it anyway because they needed the name on the wall. I looked at the sender again. Internal_archive. Someone inside the building had sent this. Maybe the exhausted intern I had met. Maybe Chloe. The receptionist who looked terrified. Maybe someone who had watched Julian Vale walk in and realized that things were about to get ugly. It didn't matter who sent it. It mattered that I had it. I forwarded the email to Elias. Then I forwarded it to my personal secure cloud storage. Then I printed a copy at the print shop down the street. I sat in my car outside the print shop, holding the warm paper. Tomorrow night was the donor announcement event. It was the capstone of the season. They were going to live stream the success of the campaign. They were going to parade the Simmons family circle on stage. They were going to cement the lie into history. Julian Vale thought he had contained me. He thought the threat of ruining my reputation would keep me quiet. He thought I would be too afraid of hurting my parents to pull the trigger. He was wrong. I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear had burned away in that glass room when Harriman called me a clean story. I wasn't a story. I was a witness. I started the car. I wasn't going to send a letter. I wasn't going to file a motion. I was going to the announcement. If they wanted a face for their campaign, I would give them one, but it wasn't going to be the face they expected. I drove home, the city lights blurring past me. I felt a strange, terrible calm settling over me. It was the calm of a soldier checking their ammunition before the dawn raid. My mother had called me small. She had said I would burn down a palace because of a zoning permit. She was right about one thing. I was going to burn it down, but not because of a permit, because the palace was built on my back, and I was done carrying the weight. The Hotel Delamar was glowing like a lantern against the dark coastal sky. Searchlights swept the clouds, and a line of valets in red jackets were sprinting back and forth. Parking the German sedans and Italian sports cars of the city's upper crust, I wore the navy dress, the one I had bought for the night I was uninvited. It felt like armor now. I had pulled my hair back tight, painted my lips a dark crimson, and put the printed emails and the forged pledge agreement in a slim leather folder tucked under my arm. I walked up the main stairs, the red carpet spongy beneath my heels. I reached the check-in desk, where two women with iPads were managing the guest list. "Name?" the first woman asked, not looking up. "Lila Simmons." I said. The woman's finger hovered over the screen. She scrolled down. Then she stopped. She looked up at me. Her expression shifted from professional boredom to alert caution. "I am sorry," she said. Her voice was too loud. "Ms. Simmons." "You are not on the list," I smiled. "I am sure I am." I said, "I am a community anchor. My parents are the guests of honor." The woman tapped her earpiece. "Security to the front desk, please." She looked back at me. "I have strict instructions." "Ms. Simmons," she said, "you are on the do not admit list. We have been told that if you attempt to enter, we are to escort you off the property." I looked past her. Through the glass doors, I could see the lobby, crowded with people, so they were scared. Julian Vale, the fixer, had done exactly what I expected. He had fortified the perimeter. He knew that if I got into that room, the narrative he was spinning would shatter. "I understand," I said. I turned around and walked back down the stairs. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. That was what they expected. They expected the hysterical daughter. They didn't expect the logistics manager. I walked around the side of the hotel, past the manicured hedges, toward the service entrance I had used a week ago. A security guard was standing by the loading dock, smoking a cigarette. He was big, bored, and checking his phone. I waited in the shadows of a delivery truck, the door to the kitchen propped open, and a young man walked out carrying a crate of empty bottles. It was the intern, the one who had helped me find the files in the war room, the one who looked exhausted. He set the crate down and wiped his hands on his apron. The security guard nodded to him and looked back at his phone. I stepped out of the shadows. "Hey," I whispered. The intern jumped. He squinted at me in the darkness. "You?" he asked. "You are the daughter. The one from the file box. I need to get in." I said, "They blacklisted me at the front door." He looked at the door, then back at me. He looked nervous. "They are live," he said. "The stream started 10 minutes ago. It is crazy inside. Everyone is on edge. Patricia Vance is screaming at the lighting crew. I need to get in." I said again, "Please, you saw the files. You know what they did." He hesitated. He looked at the security guard, who was now watching a video on his phone, the blue light illuminating his face. The intern took a breath. "The service corridor," he said softly. "Take the second left. It comes out behind the AV booth. Stay low." "Thank you," I said. He held the door open with his foot. "Be careful," he whispered. "They are about to say your name on stage." I slipped past him, into the humid, chaotic heat of the kitchen. I navigated the maze of stainless steel tables and shouting chefs. I walked with purpose, acting like I belonged there, and nobody stopped me. I found the second left. It was a narrow hallway lined with stacked chairs. At the end was a black curtain. I pushed the curtain aside just an inch. I was in the ballroom. The air was cold and smelled of expensive perfume and prime rib. The room was bathed in blue and gold light. Hundreds of people were seated at round tables, their faces turned toward the stage, on the stage. Arthur Harriman stood at a podium. Behind him was a massive screen. "Tonight," Harriman was saying, his voice booming through the sound system, "is about legacy. It is about the families who built this city and the families who will sustain it." There was a ripple of polite applause. "We have faced challenges this year," Harriman continued, "but true leadership is defined by how we rise to meet those challenges, and no family has exemplified this commitment more than our newest members of the Harbor Crest Meridian Society." I scanned the room. I saw table 8. It was right in the front, bathed in a spotlight. My parents were there. My father was wearing a tuxedo that looked stiff on his shoulders. He was staring at his water glass, his face pale and shiny with sweat. My mother was sitting next to him. She was radiant. She was wearing a gold dress that shimmered under the lights. She was smiling, nodding at Harriman, playing the role of the benevolent matriarch perfectly. She looked like a queen. She looked like a woman who had finally arrived. "Please join me in welcoming," Harriman said, "the Simmons family circle." The applause was louder this time. My mother stood up, waving graciously. She nudged my father, and he stood up too, moving like a puppet with cut strings. "And," Harriman added, "although she could not be with us on stage tonight due to her professional obligations, we want to honor the next generation, the driving force behind this generous gift." The screen behind him changed. A video montage began to play. Violin music swelled. Images faded in and out. A picture of my parents' house. A picture of my father's construction truck. And then, a picture of me. It was my LinkedIn headshot. A photo I had taken 3 years ago for a supply chain conference. I looked serious, professional, competent. Below my face, the text appeared in gold letters. Lila Simmons, community partner, visionary. I stared at the screen. They had stolen my face. They had stolen my reputation. And they were projecting it onto a 20-foot screen to sell a lie to 300 wealthy people. I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. It was the sharp, absolute calm of knowing exactly what had to be done. I stepped out from behind the curtain. I didn't run. I walked. I walked down the side aisle, my heels making no sound on the carpet. The room was dark. The eyes focused on the screen. I reached the front of the room just as the video ended, and the lights came up on the stage. Harriman was smiling, basking in the applause. A truly inspiring story. He said, "Now, I would like to invite Robert and—" I walked up the stairs to the stage. The movement caught the eye of the front row. Heads turned. A murmur started. A low wave of confusion. Harriman saw me. His smile froze. His eyes widened. I walked straight to the podium. Harriman blocked the microphone. "Security," he hissed, his hand covering the mic. "Get her out of here." I didn't look at him. I looked at the sound engineer in the booth at the back of the room. The intern's friend. Perhaps, or just a confused technician. "Turn it on," I said. My voice was loud enough to be heard in the front row. Harriman tried to grab my arm. I pulled away. I reached into my folder and pulled out the paper. The email. The one where Harriman authorized the fraud. I held it up. "Arthur," I said, "do you want me to read this to the room, or do you want to let me speak?" Harriman looked at the paper. He recognized it. The color drained from his face. He stepped back, his hand falling away from the microphone. I stepped up to the podium. The room was silent. The kind of silence that happens before a car crash. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the councilman. I saw the bankers. I saw my parents. My mother was standing, her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wide with horror, not concern. Horror. She was watching her palace burn. I leaned into the microphone. "My name is Lila Simmons," I said. My voice echoed through the hall, clear and steady, and I did not sign that pledge. A gasp went through the room, a physical sound, like the air being sucked out of the space. I looked directly at the camera at the back of the room, the red light glowing, broadcasting this moment to the entire donor list. My identity was used without my consent. I said, a credit line of $120,000 was opened in my name without my knowledge. and the Marrowell Civic Foundation knew about it. I held up the email. I have the internal correspondence, I said. I have the time-stamped email from Arthur Harriman authorizing the processing of a fraudulent pledge to satisfy a corporate sponsor requirement. I turned to look at Harriman. He was trembling. Why? I asked him. The same question I had asked in the glass room. But this time, the world was listening. Why was my name necessary if everything was legitimate? Harriman didn't answer. He looked like he was about to vomit. I looked back at the crowd. The room fractured. People began to stand up. Some looked horrified, whispering to each other. Others, the ones with the most to lose, were already reaching for their phones, texting their lawyers, their PR teams. Then I heard a scream. "You are ruining everything." It was my mother. She was rushing toward the stage. She wasn't running to me. She was running at me. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure rage. The gold dress looked garish now, a costume for a play that had been canceled. "Stop her!" she screamed at the security guards. "She is lying. She is sick." She reached the edge of the stage. She clawed at the air, trying to reach me. "Get down!" she hissed. "You ungrateful, jealous little—" I looked down at her. I didn't yell. I didn't step back. I am not sick. "Mom," I said into the microphone, "and I am not a mask. You cannot wear my face to hide your debt. It was for you," she shrieked. "It was all for you. It was never for me." I said, "It was for the applause." A board member, a heavy-set man I didn't recognize, rushed the stage from the wings. He grabbed the microphone stand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted, his voice cracking, "please, there has been a misunderstanding, a family dispute. We will handle this privately." Privately? The voice came from the middle of the room. A woman stood up. She was wearing a silver dress. She looked like the woman I had heard at the brunch, the one with the sharp nose. I was pressured too. She called out. The room went deadly still again. The board member froze. "What?" he asked. "The soft pledge," the woman said. Her voice shook, but she was loud. "Arthur told us it was just a placeholder. He said we could back out later. But then he sent the invoice to my husband's firm. He leveraged us." Another man stood up near the back. "Same here." He yelled, "They told me it was standard practice to inflate the initial commitment for the optics." The narrative broke. It wasn't just about the unstable daughter anymore. The dam had cracked. I looked at my father. He was still standing at table 8. He looked alone. He looked like a man waking up in a burning house. He looked at my mother, who was still screaming at the security guards. He looked at me, standing on the stage with the proof in my hand. He walked toward the stage. "Robert!" my mother yelled. Tell them she is lying." My father climbed the stairs. He moved slowly. He looked old. He walked past Harriman. He walked past the board member. He came to the podium. I stepped aside. He looked at the microphone. Then he looked at the crowd. "I signed it," he said. His voice was a whisper, but the microphone caught it. He took a breath. "I signed the papers," he said, louder. "I forged her name." My mother let out a wail that sounded like an animal in a trap. "No, Robert, no, we were told it was standard," my father said. He looked at Harriman. "You told me everyone did it. You told me it was the only way to get in. You said if I didn't do it, I was failing my family." He looked at me. Tears were running down his face. I was scared. He said, "I just wanted to be enough." The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Then the chaos broke. The live stream cut to black. I saw the red light on the camera die. But it was too late. The room erupted. Guests were shoving their way toward the exits, desperate to disassociate themselves from the scandal. The PR consultant, Julian Vale, was sprinting toward the stage, shouting into a headset. Harriman was backing away, looking for an exit that wasn't blocked by angry donors. My mother was on her knees at the edge of the stage, sobbing into the carpet, not for her husband, not for her daughter, but for the loss of the illusion. I looked at my father one last time. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his hands, the hands that had built houses, the hands that had forged a signature. I put the microphone down. I walked off the stage. I didn't go to my parents. There was nothing left to say. The truth was out, and it was uglier than any lie they could have told. I walked down the center aisle, against the flow of the panicked crowd. People moved out of my way. They looked at me with fear, with awe, with the realization that I was the only real thing in the room. I reached the lobby. It was a bedlam of valets and shouting guests. I pushed through the glass doors and stepped out into the night air. It was cold. The wind was blowing off the ocean, salty and clean. I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. They were getting louder. Police, maybe for the fraud, maybe for the riot breaking out in the ballroom, maybe for the tragedy of a family that had destroyed itself for a seat at a table that didn't exist. I walked to my car. I didn't look back at the Hotel Delamar. I didn't look back at the gold lights. I took the phone out of my purse. I had a text from Elias. "Did you do it?" I typed back 2 words. "It's done." I got in the car and turned the key. My credit score was ruined. My parents were likely going to prison. My name was going to be in the papers for weeks. But as I pulled out of the lot, driving past the screaming sirens, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't a community anchor. I wasn't a senior director. I wasn't a dutiful daughter. I was Lila Simmons. And for the first time in my life, I owned that name. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey into the dark side of ambition and family pressure, and I hope it resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from a busy city, a quiet town, or somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, betrayal, and the moment the truth comes out, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were Lila? Would you have protected your parents, or would you have burned the illusion down? Share your perspective in English in the comments. Until next time.